If your feet feel numb when you wake up in the morning, if they tingle at night when everything else in the room is quiet, if they feel like blocks of wood, or like you are walking on cotton wool that never quite goes away, your nervous system is sending you a signal right now that deserves your full attention. Not tomorrow, not after you finish everything else on your list, right now. Let me tell you about a patient named Margaret, 68 years old, retired librarian from the Pacific Northwest. She came in for a routine follow-up in the spring of this year, 2026. And within the first 2 minutes of the appointment, she mentioned, almost apologetically, that her feet had been waking her up at night for the past 2 years. A tingling that started in her toes and crept up toward her shins by the time evening arrived. Cold that would not respond to extra blankets or warm socks. A heaviness in the morning that made the first few steps to the bathroom feel uncertain and unfamiliar. She had not mentioned it at previous appointments because she assumed it was simply what aging felt like. She had normalized something that did not need to be normal. After I showed her 4 specific chair exercises and asked her to perform them consistently every single day, she came back 3 weeks later and told me she had slept through the entire night for the first time in 2 years. Her feet felt like feet again when she woke up, rather than like objects attached to her legs that she had to deliberately remind herself to trust. 4 exercises, 3 weeks, done sitting in a chair. What I am going to walk you through today is exactly what I showed Margaret, precisely why each exercise works at the neurological and circulatory level, and what you need to understand about your feet and your nervous system that almost nobody explains clearly enough to make sense of what you are actually experiencing. Stay with me through all 4 exercises because the 4th one is the one that produced the breakthrough for Margaret. And if your feet tingle, burn, or go numb at night, I want you to understand before we begin that what you are experiencing is not something you simply have to accept as an inevitable feature of getting older. Before the exercises begin, let me answer the question that matters most. Is numb and tingling feet just poor circulation? Or is something deeper happening? It is considerably deeper than circulation. And research published through major academic medical centers studying seniors experiencing exactly these symptoms has confirmed something that changes the entire frame of how to approach this problem. The nerves in the feet of older adults experiencing tingling, burning, and numbness are not, in the majority of cases, permanently destroyed. They have gone dormant. The distinction between destroyed and dormant is the most important thing you can understand about this condition, because destroyed tissue cannot be rehabilitated. Dormant tissue can be woken back up. The research that established this found that when seniors with these symptoms performed targeted lower limb movements consistently, tissue examination showed that they actually generated new nerve fiber branches. The nervous system, even in its 7th and 8th decades, retains a capacity for repair and renewal that most people are never told about. A quiet nerve can be stimulated back into activity. That is the biological promise behind everything we are doing today. We are not chasing symptomatic relief. We are sending a direct biological signal to dormant nerve tissue to switch itself back on. One important note before we begin. These exercises are designed for age-related nerve quieting and general peripheral circulation improvement. If you are managing severe diabetes, or if you have noticed sudden or significant changes in your feet recently, please keep your own physician informed about what you are doing and get their guidance alongside this routine. Now let us prepare the pathways before we move into the 4 primary exercises. Sit tall in your chair, with both feet flat on the floor. Shoulders relaxed, back supported but not slumped. Begin by rolling each ankle slowly. 10 full rotations in one direction, and then 10 in the other. Do this deliberately and give each rotation your full attention. This immediately begins pushing blood down into the feet and into the small blood vessels that supply the nerve tissue you are trying to reach. Follow the ankle rolls with 20 gentle alternating foot taps on the floor, left, then right, at a steady, comfortable rhythm, like the softest possible drum beat. This sends a preliminary signal to your nervous system that a change in the pattern of stimulation is coming. Your nervous system is paying attention to the change. Now we are ready. The first exercise is the seated toe raise and spread. If your toes feel stiff or curled, if they feel disconnected from the rest of your foot, if you are genuinely uncertain whether you could move them individually if you tried, the nerve pathways that control them have gone quiet from disuse and insufficient stimulation. This exercise sends a direct electrical signal up those pathways from the toes, through the foot, and into the lower leg, working the entire chain of neural communication from the very end of the circuit upward. If you can remove your shoes and socks for this exercise, please do. Bare skin against the floor gives your nervous system a category of sensory input it almost never receives anymore. Decades of fixed-sole shoes and uniformly smooth floors have removed the varied textural signals that your feet evolved to receive and that your nervous system uses to maintain active neural pathways in the lower extremities. For a nervous system that has been sensory deprived for years, the direct contact of bare skin against the floor is medicine. Sit tall with both feet flat. Now lift all 10 toes as high as you comfortably can and hold that position for 3 full seconds. Feel the pull along the top of your foot. Now, while still holding the toes raised, spread them as wide apart as you can manage and hold that spread for 2 additional seconds. Then lower everything slowly and with control back to the floor. That is 1 complete repetition. You are going to do 12. As you work through each repetition, pay specific attention to which toes respond fully, which respond partially, and which seem barely to register your intention to move them. For most people, the little toe is the least responsive. Give it deliberate, focused attention on every repetition. The act of specifically directing your attention and your conscious intention toward an unresponsive toe is not just a mental exercise. It is an active neurological signal traveling down from the motor cortex through the spinal cord toward those dormant nerve pathways. Margaret described her feet in the mornings as 2 blocks of wood before she began this routine. By the end of the first week of doing this exercise every single day, she reported that her feet felt less like wood and more like feet. Not completely, not dramatically, but enough to notice. And noticing is exactly where recovery begins. The nervous system does not recover in sudden leaps. It recovers in increments that accumulate into something meaningful over consistent days of practice. The second exercise is the seated calf pump with foot press. If your feet stay cold, even when the rest of your body is warm, if the coldness does not respond to warm socks or additional blankets, your calves have stopped performing one of their most critical functions. The calf muscle is the most powerful circulation pump in your entire lower body. When you walk, the calf squeezes rhythmically with each step, pushing blood upward out of the lower leg and drawing fresh oxygenated blood down from above into the foot and ankle. When you are sedentary for extended periods, that pumping action stops. Blood pools in the lower leg. The feet are left starved of fresh circulation. And nerve tissue is the most oxygen-hungry tissue in the body. When it is deprived of adequate oxygen delivery, the symptoms you feel are tingling, numbness, burning, and that pervasive coldness that no external warmth seems able to correct. Sit tall. Raise both heels as high as you comfortably can, coming up onto the balls of your feet. At the highest point of the raise, press the balls of your feet firmly into the floor for 2 full seconds. Feel the squeeze through the calf muscle, the engagement along the back of the lower leg, and the spreading pressure through the arch of your foot. Now lower slowly and with deliberate control all the way back to flat. That is 1 repetition, and you are going to do 20 at a pace of approximately 1 full raise and lower every 4 seconds. That pace is not optional, and it is not arbitrary. If you rush this exercise, you are bouncing on your ankles, and the calf muscle never fully contracts and releases through its complete range of motion. The full contraction is what empties the venous blood out of the lower leg. The full release is what creates the pressure differential that draws fresh arterial blood down into the foot. Slow and deliberate is the mechanism of the medicine. Think of it as creating a second heartbeat for your lower leg, a rhythmic pumping action that your calf is supposed to provide every day, but has been failing to provide during the extended periods of sitting that characterize modern daily life for most older adults. Margaret told me that the calf pump was the first exercise where she felt something change in real time during the exercise itself. By approximately the 15th repetition, she felt warmth returning to her left foot. A warmth, she said, she had not felt in so long she had genuinely forgotten what it was supposed to feel like. That warmth is blood arriving in tissue that has been cold and understimulated. For anyone living with peripheral neuropathy symptoms, feeling genuine warmth return to a cold foot during an exercise is one of the most hopeful sensory experiences available. The third exercise is seated foot rolling with a towel. This exercise reaches a nerve pathway that almost every standard foot exercise program misses entirely. The plantar surface of the foot, the arch, the ball, the heel, is one of the most densely nerve-rich surfaces in the entire human body. It is designed to receive constant, varied mechanical stimulation from different textures, temperatures, and pressures across the ground surface as you move through your environment. Years of thick-soled footwear and uniformly smooth indoor flooring have progressively deprived that nerve-rich surface of the stimulation it needs to maintain active, healthy neural pathways. The nerve endings in the arch go quiet from understimulation in the same way that a muscle weakens from disuse. And when those nerve endings go quiet, the tingling and numbness that characterize peripheral neuropathy are often the result. You do not need any special equipment for this exercise. Take a standard hand towel, fold it once or twice to create a firm roll, and place it under the arch of your right foot. Now roll your foot slowly forward and backward across the towel, from the ball of the foot down toward the heel, pressing gently downward as you roll. The motion should be slow and deliberate, not a quick back and forth. You are not stretching the tissue. You are providing mechanical stimulation to the nerve endings embedded in the arch and sole. As you roll, pay attention to the sensory information coming back from your foot. Search for spots that feel tight or tender. But more importantly, search for spots that feel like almost nothing at all. When you find an area of significant numbness, where the sensation of the towel beneath your foot is absent or very faint, stop the rolling motion and hold steady, firm pressure on that spot for 10 full seconds. Sustained pressure is a different category of stimulus from moving pressure, and it reaches nerve endings that brief passing contact does not adequately engage. Roll the right foot for 60 full seconds, then switch and roll the left for 60 seconds. The slight asymmetry between feet that most people discover during this exercise is itself informative. If one foot is significantly less responsive to the towel than the other, that asymmetry tells you something about where the nerve quieting is most advanced and where your consistent daily attention is most needed. This exercise also produces a benefit that surprises almost everyone who learns about it. The nerve endings in your arch connect through a reflex pathway that runs upward to the spinal cord and feeds your sense of where your body is in space, the proprioceptive sense that underlies balance and stability. When those arch nerve endings go quiet, your balance degrades. Falls in older adults are not simply a muscle strength problem. They are often partly a neurological problem, a failure of the real-time sensory feedback from the feet that tells the brain what the ground surface is doing and where the body is positioned relative to it. Waking up those nerve endings through consistent daily stimulation improves the quality of the sensory information flowing upward from the feet to the brain, which improves balance in a way that strengthening exercises alone do not fully address. Margaret could not feel the towel under her right foot at all when she first attempted this exercise. The numbness was complete enough that she had to look down to confirm the towel was actually there. By the end of the second week, she could feel it. By the end of the third, she could distinguish between the sensation of rolling across the ball of her foot and the sensation of rolling across her heel. That return of differential sensation was the moment she understood that something was genuinely changing in her feet, rather than simply having a better day. The fourth exercise is seated shin taps with ankle circles. This is the one that completed the pathway reconnection for Margaret. The muscle that runs along the front of your shin, the tibialis anterior, is responsible for lifting the front of your foot during each step of walking. When it weakens, and when the nerve that supplies it, the peroneal nerve, becomes dormant from disuse and understimulation, the front of the foot begins to drag ever so slightly during the swing phase of walking. That tiny drag is what catches a toe on the edge of a rug, a slightly raised threshold, or any minor irregularity in a floor surface, and converts an ordinary step into a fall. The tibialis anterior and its nerve supply is also one of the structures most commonly and most early affected by peripheral neuropathy, which is why waking it up directly is so critical, and why this exercise was deliberately saved for last. Sit tall with both feet flat on the floor and your heels planted firmly. Now lift the front of both feet simultaneously, the toes and the balls of the feet together, as high as you comfortably can while keeping the heels down. Hold that lifted position for 2 full seconds. Feel the muscle engaging along the front of the shin, working hard against the resistance of the foot's own weight. Now lower slowly. That is 1 shin tap, and you are going to do 15 repetitions. As you perform the shin taps, you may notice a sensation traveling down the front of your shin into your foot. It may feel different from your usual neuropathy symptoms. Sharper, more purposeful, almost electrical rather than foggy. That sensation is nerve tissue responding to direct stimulation. It is your nervous system communicating that the pathway is still there and still capable of carrying a signal. Margaret experienced this on her 3rd day of performing the exercise. She described the sensation as feeling like an electrical current rather than the heavy fog she had been living with. The distinction between those two experiences, the dull, heavy fog of dormant neuropathy and the sharp, purposeful current of a nerve responding to stimulation, is one of the most meaningful early indicators that the exercises are reaching the tissue they are designed to reach. After completing the 15 shin taps, lift your right foot a few inches off the floor and draw 10 slow, wide circles with your ankle. 5 circles in one direction, 5 in the other, making each circle as large as you comfortably can. Set the right foot back down and repeat 10 circles with the left. Move deliberately. The ankle circles are not a cool down. They are an integration movement. They carry the neural signal that the shin taps generated through the ankle joint and into the foot, linking the entire pathway of the lower leg, from the shin through the ankle into the arch and toes, into a single continuous circuit of stimulation. By the time you complete the ankle circles on the second foot, every segment of the lower extremity pathway that the previous 3 exercises activated is communicating with the others. The toe raise sent a signal from the ends of the pathway upward. The calf pump restored circulation and oxygen delivery to the nerve tissue. The towel roll stimulated the densely innervated sole and arch. The shin taps directly engaged the most neuropathy-vulnerable muscle and nerve in the lower leg. And the ankle circles connected everything together into one integrated neural circuit. That is why the 4th exercise gave Margaret her feet back. Not because it was the most powerful in isolation, because it completed a sequence that the previous 3 had prepared. Now let us bring everything to a close in the right way, because how you finish a nerve stimulation routine matters as much as what you did during it. With both exercises complete, place both feet flat on the floor and press them firmly downward for 5 full seconds. Feel the even pressure spreading through the entire sole. Then completely release. Next, place one hand on top of each foot and use 10 slow strokes from the ankle toward the toes to gently massage the top surface of each foot. This encourages the circulation that the exercise is generated to move through the small vessels of the foot rather than pooling when movement stops. Finally, lift both feet slightly and shake them gently from the ankles for 10 seconds. Let everything you have just worked relax and settle. What you should feel now, if you have followed the sequence attentively, is something different from what your feet felt when you started. Warmer in the best case. More present. Less absent. More like feet that belong to you, rather than objects that are attached to you at the ankle. Here is the complete routine that Margaret follows every single day, and that I am asking you to follow every single day starting today. Not occasionally, not when you remember, every day, because nerve tissue responds to consistency in a way it never responds to occasional effort. Consistent daily stimulation is the biological requirement for the kind of progressive change that took Margaret from 2 years of disrupted nights to sleeping through the night in 3 weeks. The toe raise and spread, 12 repetitions with bare feet against the floor, attending specifically to your least responsive toes. The seated calf pump, 20 repetitions at a slow 4-second pace, feeling the full contraction and release of the calf with each repetition. The towel roll, 60 seconds on each foot, pausing on numb spots with 10 seconds of sustained pressure. And the shin taps with ankle circles, 15 shin taps followed by 10 ankle circles on each side, listening for the purposeful electrical current that tells you the nerve is responding. 10 minutes, sitting in a chair, every day. Numb feet and persistent tingling are not something you are required to accept as the inevitable texture of life after 60. The research is clear that for many older adults, the nerve tissue involved in these symptoms is dormant rather than destroyed, and dormant tissue responds to the right kind of consistent stimulation. You now have that stimulation. You have it in 4 specific movements backed by the same neurological principles that produced Margaret's results in 3 weeks. What you do with it from today forward is entirely in your hands, or more precisely, entirely under your feet. Start today, not tomorrow, today.